Hello, this is John Judo with LionJudah.com. Today I wanted to talk about Noah and Eber and how their story, how that first off, how they're the same people. And what's most important about that is Eber is the very important point to the discussion of freedom, because when we start talking about freedom, we have four documents that relate to our freedom here in the United States, or for the world that matter. And that is the Constitution of the United States, the Declaration of Independence, the Holy Bible, and the Holy Book of Enoch. And together these four books these four books guarantee freedom in their original form. And what happens is the reason that we're not having freedom is people aren't honoring the Constitution in its original form. That's because we've allowed communists to weaponize the Constitution against the very people that it was meant to protect, and that is the racial minorities, the Protestants. And it's gotten so bad that we have a constant propaganda stream within our media cycle, where there are people that are saying that they're racial minorities because of their skin color, which is the exact opposite of everything that these four documents notate as righteousness. And when we really get down to the nitty gritty of racial identification and racial classification, there's only two races. And there's always a yin and a yang to this racial duality that we live in. And this racial duality that we can live in is often described as white and black. And that can be very, 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 very misleading and offensive to a lot of people in a lot of respects, and rightfully so. Because what happens in races is if you're reading the Holy Bible, you're reading the Book of Enoch, and and then you get into the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, these documents are clearly stating there's a difference between human beings and vampires. And it states clearly that the United States is the lone state or I should say, the lone nation as a sanctuary for human beings, while the rest of the world honors vampirism, if you will, which is communism. To make a long story short, so when we start talking about freedom, we start talking about the need to get away from vampires. And, with me being here in San Diego right now, which is a beautiful city and a beautiful state, it's cluttered full of vampires. And there's just almost no room to breathe out here. As part of my story was being picked up by the police and arrested for of extremely minor charge. And there's just this constant push toward slavery out here that you don't really notice it until you get into something, until there's trouble. And it's something that needs to get talked about, and it's part of the continuing of the story of the Bible, if you will. That we need to go back to these four documents and figure out what's going on, because what's going on is that there's a mystery that all the four books come together, all the four documents, I should say, come together and lend to one another truth and honesty and security toward freedom. And what happens is one of the biggest parts of the compatibility of these four documents is that the Lamb's Book of Life, it unlocks the mystery of the seven seals. And in Revelations 5, when the seven seals are open, Jesus appears. And he appears amongst the seven giants, my seven sons, if you will. And Jesus, of course, being one of my sons, too. So this is always something that makes me smile, and always something that makes me get up and really get after it. But also getting up and get after it, there are also people watching me. As you'll see in the Book of Enoch, that it's already been prophesied that I will be put into a child's place. I will be a baby for a long time. And, that's part of my story, and it's part of why I wanted to talk about Eber, because Eber is Noah. And that's one of the facts it's hard to wrap your head around. And it's one of those things you really have to be in touch and in tune with your spiritual side. Be in touch with Eber, for that matter, to understand that Eber is, in fact, Noah. Noah is kidnapped. He's kidnapped by Shem, Ham, and Japheth. The story as the story goes, they don't get into too much detail about Noah. They do, but it can be construed a different way. And one thing that I know for certain is that Eber is one of our seven kings. And it's because of his story. It's because of his no. And one thing you got to understand is you can't really digest this as fact until you read the book of Enoch and realize that there's some gaps. There's some holy gaps. That's why it's called a holy Bible, because the book is holy. There are holes in it, and you need all four of these documents to understand why it's holy and why it exists, and why the universe exists as it does. So when we get into this and start understanding that the racial minorities are in fact the white people as explained as human beings, and that's one thing, like I said, where we've gotten so deep into propaganda, and we've let the watchers, the CIA, and the Sanhedrin take so much control over our country that this idea of being white has turned into a material thing, when it's exactly not that. It's a spiritual thing. It's an understanding. It's a part of being a human being, and a part of understanding that, hey, as a human being, I can only live for so long, but vampires are living longer. So we have this situation where we've been operating as a country under the ideas of human beings being put into place of priority up till the 60s. And once the 60s rolled around, the vampires took control under Kennedy. And before that, Woodrow Wilson was introduced some legislation to bring down the human quality of life. And of course, John Kennedy during the Vietnam War, and Woodrow Wilson during the First World War, they kind of layered this on top of one another to take away our freedom. And what happens is we turn into a communist nation, and we're fighting for communist cause. And even to this date right now, our nation is basically being sucked dry by vampires, communists. And we see communists walking around here, running the whole state of California, and with reckless abandon, I might add. And so what happens is we get into the Revelations, and Revelations 5 explains that the seven seals will be broken, and what these seven seals are is the final documentation that I hand to Christ and say, or I'm sorry, hand to Jesus and say, hey, look, these are all the names from the Lamb's Book of Life of the people whose heads have been sealed, and in your honor. And the seal, if you don't get it, is CIL, Christ is Lord. That's seal. And it's one of those things that, there's a lot of aha moments in the book of Revelations that make the whole book make sense. And you almost have to read Revelations first to understand Genesis. And as part of the hard part of reading the Bible is that if you don't have time to dive in deep, which most people don't, and most people just say, hey, look, I accept this as truth, and it has a lot to do with our nation, but at the same time, we don't have people that are fighting for freedom. As you can see, this pandemic is completely and totally unconstitutional. I've been talked to by the police as early as today, and was in jail for 10 days, having my constitutional rights continually violated. And it gets to the point where you've entered into a realm of victimization of vampirism. And when a vampire makes you a victim, you can't stay a victim in order to get in to heaven. You can't stay a victim. You have to attack. You cannot let people who are claiming they're Jews before me, of all people, and saying, hey, look, we need to take priority into our government because you're sick or we're sick, and we should be allowed to make the rules. And when you've got guys like Joe Biden who want to play along with this vampire game, it turns into a situation where we've got to go to Revelations 9. And Revelations 9 is where the heads get sealed, and all of our members come together and have their heads sealed with Christ's holy name. And what has to happen next is like I said, these people are vampires, and they need to get hurt. And for the sake of our nation, that's how this whole thing works. And once we get into the mode of, hey, we got to get rid of these vampires out of we've got to get rid of these vampires out of our state in order to live, in order to sustain ourselves and have sustenance. Uh, that entails that, hey, people start figuring out, hey, wow, you really can't kill these people. There's only one way to get rid of them, and that's explained in the Holy Bible. And I put pictures up of the Sanhedrin and the devil and Satan and so forth. And what happens is our 70 churches, which we will downsize to 70 churches under the seven angels. And the seven angels are named. They're the first seven people named in the Bible, from Adam to Enoch. So like I said, Enoch is a big part of understanding what we're doing, where we're going, and how we're going to come together as a church, under me, of course. And it explains a lot of my plight on the beard and the hair and so forth, because the Sanhedrin, Dave Chappelle, who is Eve, and that's an important part to understanding the key to the shaft of the abyss, and the key of David is that David Chappelle is actually Eve. He's actually the mother of Seth, and he's the mother of mankind, for that matter. And that's part of the part that's even hard for me to take in to this day, and it's a hard part to just hold on to as a Christian. And then when you go out and have this knowledge and try and live a regular life, you still understand, because like I'm here in San Diego, kind of putting this whole thing together, and not just not just the storyline and the understanding and conscious level, but I've got to put together the Lamb's Book of Life. I've got to put together a target matrix. There's a lot of things that I have to do. Get the head seals ready. There's a whole lot of dependencies that I have to take care of to keep this story going, and keep the universe going, for that matter. And look, like I said, I just got out of jail. I've been sleeping out of side, so I'm not trying to sound bigger than anybody. I just want to see my giants. So in getting to that, like I said, I want to really start offering pre-sales to the head seals, and I'm speculating the cost will be somewhere between $49 and $100. But what has to happen first is we've got to get distribution, and distribution comes through, as explained in the Book of Enoch. We are going to have 70 churches under the seven angels, and it's explained in the Holy Bible as well. But nonetheless, we have to start taking the bull by the horns, literally, because when we start talking about revelations, we start understanding that these guys, these first seven angels, they're larger than life, and I think about them every single day because they're my sons. How can you not think about them? And they mean everything to me, and I really want to talk more to members, and get out and start the effort to grow, get the church back up into its rightful standing, because our Constitution has literally been weaponized against us. And when you put that into context of racial discrimination in housing, and business services, and media service, and just the whole idea of the preschool to prison pipeline, you start to understand that we're getting shafted, and we've been getting shafted, and we have to stand up now, and stand up and say, hey, look, this is what the book says, and we all agree that this is truth. So with that said, I'm excited about moving forward, and I'm excited about moving past this impasse, because like I said, me being targeted personally is something that I have to deal with every day. And I'm sure there are other people that have to deal with it. And it's part of coming together and becoming a support group and saying, hey, look, this is bad, but our guy John, Lion of Judah, he has seven angels who are giants. And when four of them come back, which we are very, very, very close to, when four of them come back, they're going to take out a third of mankind by themselves. And I, I'm excited about it, because anybody who can turn around and close our country down, for a year and a half, and and then they can turn around and say, hey, look, I want this person to get money and that person to get money, and they're doing favors on top of the American people, on top of our Constitution, on top of the Holy Bible. They deserve every giant foot put to them and every piece of the capstone that's coming their way. So, with that said, like I've been knocked down more than once, more than twice, just moving along these grounds to a magnitude you would have no idea. But I can still raise my head high because I got 7 giants coming my way, and they'll be working for me. Not to mention the 7 angels that I have in the sky. So that's 14 angels in total, not counting the Sanhedrin, who have been grooming me for this in the first place. So, in the very end, the bad guys lose. The vampires lose. And, a lot of vampires hop into this vampire business thinking that they're going to live a long time and then switch over and so forth. But it just doesn't work like that. It's not that easy because, the head vampires have been around for 10,000 or more years. So the idea that these people are just going to hop in and hop out or something like that, it's something that, you know, that's why we have the church. So look, I'm just really ready to get started. I'm really ready to start preaching and getting into the church and speaking to people who want to hear me speak and talk about the angels and talk about Jesus and talk about Eber. And like I said, Eber's a big part of this because, like I said, Eber's Noah. And I just want to give people more information, the stuff that's right there in the Bible. It's right there in front of you. And it's one of those things that the Bible is written in such a way that if you can't internalize all the details and every word, every comma, every quotation, and it's hard to grab hold of. And sometimes, I'll start at 7 and I'll look up in 4 or 5 hours will easily pass by, and I won't even have got past a chapter. So I'm really excited about getting started. Like I said, I was locked up, and I saw a really big lane where the church can really get in there and change our country for the better, because the prison system is nothing more than a slave system. It's nothing more than a vampire feeding, where they just go to feed on these young men, these young kids in most time, and they keep them sustained on drugs and alcohol and crime and homosexuality that you, human beings cannot sustain themselves on that. You can't even be around that as a human being. And here I am around it for 10 days. And I'm talking to these kids who act, or at least think, or conditioned, I should say, to think that what they're doing is normal, that going into prison or being locked up is by vampires is a normal state of being. And you look at the California seal, and they've got all of this vampire imagery on it, and it's one of those things that's not healthy for children. And hey, thanks for listening. Look forward to talking. Look forward to pressing forward on these revelations and unlocking more of the mystery to those who want to know more. So hey, thanks again.